All right, welcome again to the Ecology Team meeting. These meetings happen quarterly, and this is a space for us to connect with our community and network of support around the Bronx River, and specifically to look into issues of ecology, what's happening on the river, what's happening with the wildlife, what are ways that we can plug into our restoration efforts, our research efforts, and all things related to the natural aspect of the river and its health. So thank you all for being here. Um, and let's just go on in and get started. Where are my slides? Give me 1 second. This computer is a little bit sluggish because I don't treat it properly. Feel free to come off mute or put questions in the chat. We will be responding to your questions and comments throughout the meeting, and we will also hold space at the end for more in-depth conversations and Q&A. Come on, computer. All right, here we go. If at any point in time my audio goes out or the picture doesn't look clear, just let one of us know, and we'll try to get that sorted out. Okay, let me act like I've done this before. So we did introductions, we did the icebreaker. This is a quick look at our agenda. I'm going to go into a little bit of a state of the river, which is where I will recount some of our highlights and important the things that happened last year regarding the river's health, and then we'll look ahead to what we're looking forward to from 2026. We'll hear a little bit of an update on a project that Save the Sound is working on, as well as some of the projects and studies and collaborations that will be impacting our work in this year. And then I would love to open up a discussion on what you all would be interested in doing this year on the Bronx River. So in addition to our volunteer opportunities, what are ways that we can engage our community to explore the ecosystem a little bit more, to kind of look into different sides of the Bronx River that maybe the public doesn't normally get to see, that kind of we get to see. So it's like a little bit of a behind the scenes opportunity that might interest folks, and anything else in between as we have time for it. And I will do my best to time keep while I do this. Juvella and David, if you're able to support me with that, that would be fantastic. So I apologize for folks that have already heard this little spiel a couple of times, but this will be a little bit more of an in-depth review of last year. We want to start off by talking about the water quality metrics that we collect on a yearly basis, and those are really focused on measuring the fecal bacteria in the river, which is a proxy for sewage pollution. So well, let me back up a little bit. For folks who are not as familiar with the landscape in New York City, all of our water bodies receive sewage because of our combined sewer system, which was built a very long time ago to funnel rainwater as well as sanitary waste to wastewater treatment plants, which in theory kind of works in a smaller capacity setting. But with this many people living in New York City and the amount of rainwater that we get, that system is overwhelmed continuously, and it releases the excess volume of liquid into all of our water bodies when it rains. And it doesn't take a lot of rain for that release to happen. So this is a major concern for the restoration of the Bronx River. It is one of the main things that is holding us back from achieving fishable, swimmable conditions on the river. So we measure this annually. And the interesting news is that last year, the numbers for fecal bacteria were a little lower than in the year prior. And this is actually a trend that we've kind of been seeing over the last few years. 2024 is looking to be a little bit of an outlier at this point because of how high some of those numbers were, which could be a good thing. We want to note that in 2025, there were actually drought conditions, and that contributed to cleaner water because it meant that the sewage wasn't being released as much as it had been in previous years. We do this monitoring every 2 weeks, and so there's always little gaps in the data that we're collecting. And so there could be a rainstorm that happens when we're not collecting the data, and then when we do collect the data, the weather is dry. But generally speaking, this is a decent snapshot of different levels of bacteria at 11 monitoring sites from the North Bronx down to the South Bronx. The big spike is the outfall in Muskrat Cove Park in the North Bronx. That outfall drains uh, rainwater and water from the streets and sidewalks in southern Yonkers. We are very convinced that there is some kind of illicit connection in this pipe because it always has very high fecal bacteria, regardless of the weather conditions. And this has been true for at least 5 or 6 years since I began monitoring at that location. So it's an area of interest we're looking into. We're hoping to get that investigated, and if it's an issue, hopefully get that repaired so that we can clean up the water at that part of the river. But the other areas were pretty low, even at the actual CSO that we monitor at in Soundview Park, which is HP 009. The levels were very low last year, so that was pretty cool. We had a very exciting partnership with the Museum of Natural History. They're not on tonight, but they have collaborated with us to do really in-depth sampling that took place last September. We actually collected samples for 27 straight days. I don't think we missed a single day. Or we might have maybe missed one day, and that's 27-day period. But we basically got continuous monitoring. And September happened to be during a drought, and so we actually got to look at how quickly the river flushes away some of those contaminants after a period of rain and returns to kind of baseline conditions. And we found out that that actually happens very quickly. We didn't really know how fast those contaminants, and particularly fecal bacteria, are flushed from the river, and it happens within 24 to 36 hours. And cleaner conditions return very quickly after a period of rain, which we didn't quite know, and now we have a better understanding of what that looks like. So on this graph here, the green line is threshold set by the EPA. Anything below that threshold, you are safe to swim, you can fish safely. Anything above, the EPA considers unsafe for human contact. Typically, we don't really meet that threshold. And so there's a secondary threshold, which means it's safe for activities like canoeing and kayaking, which we do a lot on the Bronx River. During the drought conditions last year, we came very close to, and in some cases, we actually did dip below that primary contact threshold line. Very rare conditions to actually see this happen. Of course, it really takes like a drought to get to that point. So we're not expecting that we're ever really going to get to this threshold very often or at all. But it was interesting to see last year what the river would look like if we were able to actually solve the sewage issue and eliminate all that contamination from the river. What those conditions would look like. And this was kind of like a glimpse into perhaps what the future of the Bronx River looks like. And so that was very exciting to see. And we're hoping to replicate this study with the museum again this spring when we know that there's going to be a lot of rain and kind of just see what that looks like and compare those two data sets together and see what we can learn from that. Any questions so far? All right, let's keep it pushing. So we also participate in an annual project called the Unified Water Study. This is led by Save the Sound. And I'll pass it to David in a little bit to talk a little bit more about that project. I just want to give a quick snapshot on the data that we did collect last year. So we go out to a number of stations in the Bronx River's estuary, so where the river meets the East River between Soundview and Hunts Point. And we're looking at parameters like dissolved oxygen, the salinity, the temperature, the turbidity, the chlorophyll. That kind of gives us a look at how much algae is in the water. And measuring those things kind of gives us an idea of the health of the river's estuary in particular. And I'll let David explain why that's important, but I want to call out these two pictures on the right, which show an algal bloom on the Bronx River. And we have brown algae. You might be more familiar with algae that's green or kind of a bluish color. In the Bronx River's estuary, it's this kind of brownish, sometimes purplish color. It can look like coffee when it's very dense. And we had two different algal blooms. The data looks like there was two different algal blooms last year, in August and in October. And October is a little bit unusual for that kind of condition on the Bronx River. So that was That was interesting to see. Algal blooms are concerning in most aquatic systems because when they are too large, they actually end up sucking oxygen out of the water, and that kills fish. And so when we see these kinds of conditions, that means that the river might not be as able to sustain healthy fish populations as when that algae is not there. And so we don't want to see this. And algal blooms are fueled by things like runoff that contains a lot of nitrogen. So if you're putting a lot of fertilizer in your garden, that kind of thing contributes to these kinds of conditions. And so we don't want to be encouraging that. And so that's why this monitoring is so important. But David, if you're able to say a little bit more about the significance of the Unified Water Study and how it maybe has changed over the years.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Christian. And that was a great overview of why the UWS study is so important. Um, for those that are unfamiliar with the Unified Water Study, it's an EPA approved protocol that seeks to address the gaps in our data knowledge throughout the Long Island Sound. And so historically, we've had really good open water data, which was collected by the New York City DEP and the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and IEC. But the bays and harbors that dot the Long Island Sound region, we were missing that data. And so we're approaching 10 years now of the UWS study, which is a huge milestone. The Bronx River and the Bronx River Alliance has been a hugely important aspect of that work. And yeah, we're looking forward to continuing with you all. And we have all of that data actually available on our website. I'll link it in the chat, the Sound Health Explorer. You can go back to, I think, 2019 we have for the Bronx River Alliance and further for the other waters of the Sound. So I'll leave it there and I'll link that in the chat.
Thank you, David. And just to answer Catherine's question, sorry, when we posted that picture, we did it in two different, we cropped it and the icons got shifted, but that, the green square lines up, I believe, with algae, or macrophytes, as they're called in the study. Macrophytes, the algae is, or the seaweed another measure of how much nitrogen and nutrients are entering the watershed. So we do well for that. We don't do as well for things like oxygen and turbidity, but we're working on it.
Christian, really quick, that F has come a long way from the previous years. Even though it's an F, there is still improvement within that. And as Christian mentioned, that's the goal is to keep on improving. So um, don't be discouraged.
Thank you, David. Okay. This is a chronic issue that we deal with on the Bronx River, and I know it's an issue in other parts of the city as well. We have a serious problem with people throwing rideshare bikes and scooters into the water. We actually do report 300 to 400 different vehicles per year being dumped into the water body. We used to remove them as a staff because these devices contain lithium ion batteries in a lot of cases. There was a concern of the safety of the people that were handling these objects. And so we've actually been instructed to let the companies that produce them remove them, which keeps us safe, but it means that there's a lag time between when we see these things entering the water and when they actually get removed. And we don't quite know what impacts that has on the wildlife in the water. It's really a concern. It is unsightly. It is really a problem. And we are looking for solutions to limit the ability for people to actually get close enough to the water with these things to throw them in. So, and the rideshare companies have been somewhat receptive to working with us, but we do need to make more progress in that area to stop this from happening. It really is quite a big issue. So some not so nice news from last year. We actually had a lot of spills on the Bronx River in 2025. The first spill was arguably the most significant. That involved a truck that was bringing sodium hydroxide to one of the reservoirs in Westchester County. It had an accident and spilled that liquid onto the street. It ran down a storm drain, ran into the Bronx River, and it turned the river green and uh, you know, caused some actual chemical reactions to take place within the water itself. There was a spike in temperature. There was a big spike in the pH. For a period of time, the river had the same pH as hand soap, which is not great. Um, So that was really a concern, but the response was pretty quick, and we did not get reports of injured wildlife. We just didn't see it. Doesn't mean it wasn't there, but there were no reports of like injured birds or fish. We had a number of oil spills on the Bronx River in 2025 as well. This is an example of what that looks like. What we were seeing a lot is dielectric fluid, and someone did bring that up during the introductions earlier, I think, or maybe it was earlier at a different meeting. Anyway, dielectric oil is used in substations to insulate the wiring that has high voltage wires running through it. And so it's pressurized. It keeps those facilities operating so that we have power. But if anything happens to those lines, the oil can sometimes burst and leak out, and that can make its way into the water. And that happened multiple times in 2025. So we are in touch with Con Edison. They are working with us to find solutions and preventative measures to keep this from happening on the Bronx River. Dielectric oil is not the same as petroleum-based oil. It is not as heavy. It is not as toxic. Um, it does not belong in a river, but it is not the same as a petroleum oil spill, and doesn't require the same level of like hazmat response. Um, that being said, we don't want to see this happening, and last year was a banner year for spills on the Bronx River. So we're hoping that this year is different and that we will have good relations with Con Edison going forward to keep the river clean and healthy. Um, I'll mention this later in the meeting, but if you're ever near the Bronx River or any river really, and you see oil, there is a number you can call. Um, but you can call 311. There's a spill response team. You really should report it as soon as you can. It helps the response crews get out and address the situation as quickly as possible. Yeah, and some of the spills that we see have no known origin, and the chemical in the water is not identifiable. And so this is an example last year from August of a spill. We didn't know what that foam was. We couldn't trace its location, and DEC was not able to really find anything conclusive when they investigated it. So these things happen. They're very hard to deal with because we don't really know where to address the issue. So again, right, even when we see it and we can't identify it, it's still always important to let the DEC and other agencies know because perhaps there's a way to at least mitigate the impacts to the water body. All right, some good news from last year. We got our first beaver sighting in many, many years since the death of Jose the Beaver sometime around 2018. RJ, who's actually on the call right now, was doing a monitoring project using camera traps and got these really amazing pictures of a brand new beaver on the Bronx River last year. So this was a big kind of exciting moment for us. The beaver has stuck around. It's been chewing down trees. Now in the botanical garden, it had been chewing trees in the Bronx Zoo. And then we got word from our friends in the garden that they were seeing some fallen trees there. So it's kind of moving around a little bit. And if it keeps chopping down trees, we're going to have to think about how to happily cohabitate with an animal that is cutting down trees that we're planting. But it's still a nice thing to see. It means that the ecosystem is able to support this kind of wildlife that has not really been seen a lot in New York City for a couple hundred years. And so it's a welcome sign to us. And we're hoping that this is the beginning of, the return of more native wildlife to the Bronx River. This, I don't know if these are not loading. So take my word for it, and we have a video on our YouTube, but we did see a shark in the Bronx River last September, which is very, very cool. I believe it was a dogfish shark, maybe a smooth dogfish. We did send it to Parks. Does anyone know if the ichthyologists were able to identify if it was indeed a type of dogfish shark?
And
I
Christian, if you
do.
if
Go
you
ahead.
escape, you can hit play on them. Sorry, go ahead, Becca.
I do not remember. I will have to dig back.
I don't know if folks can see that well, but there's a little bit of movement out there, and it was during a volunteer event, and a bunch of volunteers ran up to our staff and identified that it was a big fish that looked like a shark, and we agreed. So pretty cool. Um, oh, now that one's playing. All right. Yeah, we were very excited to see this first shark report on the Bronx River for a really, really long time, as far as I know. So cool stuff. We were able to restore about 4 acres of degraded habitat last year with the planting of more than 2,000 trees and shrubs. We removed more than 1,000 bags of invasive vegetation. We engaged more than 3,000 volunteers in 2025. So there's a huge community of support and a workforce that comes out to help us to restore the river and its watershed. And we're really thankful for that. And the work is not possible without the love and support of our volunteers, which is very evident. So thank you for those of you who contributed, and for those who are interested, there are many ways to get involved, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So we have some new updates for 2026. This came in today, unfortunately. We got a report of dead fish seen in Scarsdale on the Bronx River near the Hartsdale train station. We did report this to NYC Parks just for their awareness in case the issue moves down towards New York City. And we reached out to DEC Region 2 and 3 to make them aware. And I believe Region 3 did send someone out to investigate the incident and see if they could find a cause or what might have been happening there. The stream gauge in the New York Botanical Garden that continuously monitors river conditions did not show anything very unusual over the last 7 days. However, because of the amount of snow and road salt that has been applied across the watershed this winter, there's a lot of salt that entered into the freshwater section of the river this winter, and that is not good news for aquatic freshwater animals like those dead fish that we just saw in that other picture. So this graph is showing about a month's worth of data from the garden, and that big spike is an increase in road salt, pretty much. And so that's not good news. It can be very challenging for species to adapt to changing conditions like that. It's very harmful to have those chemicals enter into the river. And so potentially that is connected to why we were seeing dead fish on the Bronx River. Hopefully we'll know more, and I will give an update as soon as I can. But this is something that we need to look into, and there are alternatives to road salt that are being used in other parts of the world, including parts of the world where they get very frequent snow, and it works for them. And maybe it's something that we can look into adopting here in our part of the world. But for the time being, this is a continuous threat to our freshwater ecosystems here. All right, I will pass this to David, but we did learn of a cool new project taking place in Westchester County. So David, if you want to give a quick overview of what is happening here.
Thanks, Christian. And speaking of Hartsdale, unfortunately, the fish kill is kind of a bummer, but I put this in the chat. I am gonna go check out our they do log DO, Holly. I'm gonna check our continuous loggers out on the Scarsdale side this week. So maybe we'll see something interesting in regards to that. But in regards to the dam, we were awarded a $2 million grant from DEC, as it's mentioned here on the slide, to conduct a dam removal in Hartsdale, and also, as it also mentions here, conduct post removal, habitat restoration, and flood resiliency efforts. So a really big project for the Bronx River. There's multiple of these sorts of projects happening kind of at the same time. And yeah, we're really excited to get to work. This would be our first kind of shovel ready project on the Bronx River. And yeah, stay tuned for that. We'll be getting stakeholder feedback throughout the process. And speaking of stakeholder feedback, if I can also shout out that we've also began conducting our watershed plan for the Hutchinson River. We've conducted this plan in 2 phases. The first focused on Westchester. The second is going to focus on the Bronx. So if you are interested in that process, it's very similar in concept to the Bronx Rivers Intermunicipal Watershed Plan, which I'll also link in the chat. But same kind of concept. So if you're interested in that, just let me know, and I'll put my email in the chat for you to reach out. And I'll pass it back, Christian.
Thank you, David. Yeah, we're excited to see how this project goes. Dam removal conversations have been happening for a very long time on the Bronx River. Of course, we know they're a little bit controversial, but we also recognize that they offer a lot of benefits. And so it's exciting to see these projects come up and looking forward to new updates in the future. Yeah, as David mentioned very quickly, the Bronx River Watershed Management Plan was released at the end of 2024, and it outlines guidelines for improving the watershed over the next 10 years, pretty much. The document was first published in 2010. We updated it in 2024 to include climate resiliency considerations. Really a lot of interventions to protect the watershed from flooding, but also things like urban heat and air pollution. So we're excited to see some of those come online in the next few years. There will be a lot of work to do feasibility studies and get public input on priority areas. And so that will be a major topic in the next few months as we kind of dive into that process to get some of that going. So I will say stay tuned for now, but if you'd like to read the watershed plan for the Bronx River, I encourage it. It's a long document, but there's some good stuff in there. All right. If any questions about any of the information that was shared just now? If not, I will keep it pushing.
I have a question,
Yeah.
Christian. Just out of curiosity, when you described the barriers that would keep people, or like something that would keep people from throwing bikes in the river, oh, do you have any idea what that would look like?
Yeah, less physical barriers and more so kind of mechanisms within the vehicles themselves. They use GPS to kind of position themselves. And so, that's how the rideshare companies know where you are. And in a lot of places, there are speed limits. For example, when you're in a specific area and it automatically kicks in a speed limit on the device. So if you put a full restriction and lock the brakes as soon as you enter, for example, like a park where the river flows through it, it would be really difficult for whoever is using that device to then drag it all the way down to the riverbank and throw it in. And that could be a way of limiting people's ability to go and do that. Now, on a bridge that crosses the river, like that example, that wouldn't really work. And so you would kind of need a physical fence or a barrier to not be able to throw it over the edge. There's no easy solution to it, but we are looking for any idea that might help to solve that problem. And we're hoping that the rideshare companies will be just as willing to look for those ideas as we are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
The GPS.
It's tricky because we, believe in micromobility, especially in areas where there isn't as much access to transit. So we don't want to get rid of those things, but we want to keep the river healthy and safe as well. So how do we accomplish both? Any other quick questions?
Christian, Mark, it's a conversation for later, but as I learned more about those batteries and listened to the people who were working with them, just trying to transport a collection of those across the Bronx is like transporting a bomb, essentially. I mean, I don't even know how they're going to do it, but that's a long conversation. It's just not safe, having them all in the back of a truck bouncing through across the Cross Bronx Expressway. That's just scary. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, especially after they're a little bit waterlogged too. If that compromises any part of the components, it's a complicated issue, and it is not getting better, it seems. So, yeah, definitely a hard issue to solve. All right. Any other comments or questions? Juvella, if you're able to speak a little bit to this update from the DEC that we've been kind of following the last couple of years.
I could quickly speak on it. I'm trying to recall it because I ended up finding this out the day it was released. I happened to be on DEC's website when it released, and I showed it to Christian. I was just like, will this affect us, the Bronx River? So there were amended water quality classifications and standards. And so I know this picture doesn't look too different, but if you look really closely, you could see that the Harlem River, its classification was changed to what is called a WW, a wet weather limited use designation, which means if it rains, it's not safe to like swim or fish, but like if it if it's a dry weather and it's nice clear conditions, it's okay. So that we were concerned about it because that's kind of what the Bronx River is like. And
Right.
so it's a topic for discussion and hopefully it doesn't get to that, but we didn't like this reclassification. And then the water quality standards about canoeing, previously thought it was a higher threshold number, but through this, I found out it's a lot lower than um, what we've been saying. And so it made us a little confused. And once again, it raised some concerns for us. So I know this picture doesn't look like too much of a difference. It's one of those moments of spot the difference.
Yeah, essentially, right. The designated uses are based off of what is safe to do on a specific water body. And so you have some water bodies that are very clean, and then you can fish and swim from them. And then you have some that are kind of clean, but a little bit dirty, and maybe you can do some activities, but not others. And then you have some water bodies that are very, very toxic that you really shouldn't be doing any activities on them at all, right? Like the Gowanus Canal comes to mind for that. Um, and so essentially, we're working towards clean water across the city. We want every water body to be clean. Um, this reclassification essentially would mean that during dry weather, we've already met those conditions for clean water. And so we don't have to be fighting for funding and looking for intervention to clean things up because just wait for a dry day, right? And then you have those conditions. We're worried that that's going to stifle the ability of groups like us and others across the city to continue to advocate for improved water conditions because the state says, well, you have those conditions already, it just depends on the weather. We want clean conditions all year round, regardless of the weather, whether it's raining or whether it's sunny. And we don't see this as moving us in that direction. So this happened on the Harlem River. That's been a big controversy. The Harlem River is full of CSOs and sewage outfalls, and so is the Bronx River, right? And so we don't really want to lose any of the momentum that we've had over the last 20 years, 25 years to keep pushing the river to get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. And we're a little disappointed to see this reclassification. So probably we'll give more updates on this as more information comes out from the state. There will probably be sign-on letters or campaigns from water-based groups across the city as they push back against these kinds of measures. And we might be taking part in some of those as well. So at some point in the near future, we may be calling on some of you to join us in, signing a letter or making a phone call or whatever the case may be, to fight for um, better approaches to keeping our environment clean and healthy. So this dredging project, we found out about a couple years ago, first proposed in 2024, and then we didn't really hear back for a while. But essentially, the Army Corps of Engineers was looking at how the river is becoming more shallow in its estuary, which is a natural process as sediment is deposited as it spreads out in a river delta. It makes it more difficult for larger vessels to use that space, particularly during low tide. For folks who don't know, the river is used by tugboats in the southern area, but the first 3 miles or so of the river, maybe 2.5 miles, are considered navigable and are only accessible to a boat as big as a tugboat during high tide. And so this project would open up access to those larger vessels 24/7, and will probably lead to an increase in maritime traffic through the Bronx River estuary. So the proposal is to remove about 200,000 cubic feet of sediment. I think it's a 10-foot deepening of the channel. I have to check those numbers, but it would be deep enough for a tugboat to utilize at a lower tide. Uh, it's been a while, but there were dredging projects previously in this area, most recently in 1997 when 60,000 cubic feet were removed. And so what we learned is that the Army Corps is planning to do this work between October and December of 2026. So there's actually going to be a little bit of overlap between if they stick to that start time when we're actually out doing our recreational activities in the estuary. So we're going to look into that. That could be a little bit of an issue for us because we don't want necessarily to have people in canoes and kayaks running into a big old boat that's dredging sediment from the bottom of the river. So we're going to see what that might look like and may need to make some adjustments if there's going to be an issue. But we will know more, I hope, in the next few months. And I'll definitely be giving an update as we learn more. But they assured us that this will not have any real impacts to the oyster reef, which is at Soundview Park. This channel that they're digging is far enough away from the reef that it shouldn't cause too many problems. So we'll see. Yeah, that's really all the information that I have about this for now. Any other questions about the information that we just provided? So I wanted to do things a little differently today. Usually I kind of save this open discussion for the end of the call. I decided to put it in the middle so that people are still here and haven't left the meeting when I ask the question of what we want to do this year. So I'm inviting feedback. I'm inviting folks to come off mute. We would really love to engage the Eco Team in a kind of new and refreshed way in 2026. I think part of the reason for celebration is that we are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. The Bronx River Alliance was founded as a nonprofit in 2001, and this is a great time to reflect on all the accomplishments we've made over those years and then look forward to many more amazing accomplishments in the future. And what better way to celebrate those accomplishments than by actually getting into the water and seeing the fruits of our labor. And so one of the things that I think would be pretty cool would be to kind of get down and dirty with the ecosystem in the Bronx River. And one of the ways we can do that is by doing a tour of the 182nd Street Fish Passage, which was built in 2015 and allows fish to swim over the dam at 182nd Street in River Park. It's very cool. This is managed by the Parks Department. It's not open to the public, and so this is typically not a space that people get to see and explore. But the Parks Department has expressed willingness to kind of share this space with the Eco Team. And that's an example of one way that we can engage you all in person. There's some other possible ideas that I've listed here, including doing a survey for the City Nature Challenge, which is a global competition to identify as much wildlife in cities as possible. Green infrastructure tours, also quite popular over the years. One of my personal favorite activities is to do seining and eel mopping, because then you actually get to see our aquatic wildlife up close and personal. And the river has very beautiful fish. People don't actually really get to see them very often, but we have some really, really wonderful species that live year-round in the Bronx River. And the only way to see them is to actually catch them. And seining is a really fun way of doing that, and you get to find a lot of cool stuff when you do that. I would love to share that with the folks on this call if folks are interested. So just putting those ideas out there. But in the past, some of the other ways that we've engaged the Eco Team is by movie watching nights. We watched a documentary about dam removal that was really, really cool. And we had a really great Q&A with Riverkeeper during that event, which was about maybe 4 years ago or so. So I'm just putting those ideas out there. If that kind of sparks any interest or any ideas in folks, I would love for you to share that with the team, and we can maybe get some dates on the calendar or at least some concepts for how we could be having fun in person. So anybody want to kick us off? I see some activity in the chat. I want to do them all. Yes. We can. We can try to make time to do all these things here. Do have folks, I guess this is maybe a slightly different question, but on different rivers or shorelines, Have folks engaged with other water protector organizations and done a cool activity that we think maybe we can do here on the Bronx River? I would love to hear those as well, if folks have ideas. Nobody has any ideas?
I'm just jumping in
Uh-huh.
to express support for Project Waste and macroinvertebrate surveys. If folks haven't interacted with those types of events, super fun, super engaging, and yeah, we get into the water, which is the best.
Yeah. People really like to put on waders and walk around in the river. It's a little different. It's a
Yeah.
great way to experience it up close. Yeah, go ahead, Holly.
No, I was just going to say I'm all for both of those and all of these. Yes. As soon as I saw macroinvertebrate surveys, I was thinking, oh, yes, it would be fun to do that and do leaf packs and all that kind of
Hmm.
stuff would
Hmm.
be really, really cool. Yeah.
Particularly if people work with students, this is a really, really great way to introduce students to the study of ecosystems, like freshwater ecosystems, and to kind of imagine what it's like to be an ecologist. Um, Activities like this when I was a kid were kind of what got me into this field in the first place. And I think it's a really good way to inspire the next generation of environmentalists and scientists who are going to keep us healthy and safe. So if folks have, if you work with a student group, if you work with an after-school group, I think it would be great to find ways to involve them as well.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Well, the eel mopping, standing in the river looks really fun to me, so I'll be up for that. Um, I don't know if this is the time to discuss this idea for a pollinator corridor, or should we discuss that later?
We can discuss that now. That sounds like it would be pretty engaging. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I actually got a proposal from this organ. I don't want to name the organization, but they're a national organization that does endangered species conservation.
Mm.
And I hadn't I came to the Bronx River Alliance assembly and realized that there were organizations that might be interested in this, and so I thought uh, maybe I could revisit this again with you all and with this environmental organization, this national environmental organization. Um, so I just wanted to find out if there's interest. I was just before this call, I see there was a wildlife corridor project. Maybe it was in our backyard or something like that. That had. Are you familiar with a wildflower corridor project that was in the Bronx River, Christian?
It sounds kind of familiar, but I
Kind
couldn't
of
say.
familiar,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's defunct, but I think there was a interest at one time in this by a small nonprofit. But do you have any ideas on how I could proceed in getting some people to collaborate in this?
Yeah, so we do lots of invasive species removal and native plantings throughout the year.
Okay,
We have a
okay,
couple of spaces where we do that a lot. The Bronx River Forest is an area that does get a pretty decent amount of attention during the program season. We do a lot of tree planting in that area. We're also going to be doing some tree plantings in Muskrat Cove this year, and I'll get a little bit into that towards the end of the meeting. But we got a
okay,
grant to do a lot of habitat restoration. And so
okay,
because of our really unique relationship with the Parks Department, the Bronx River Alliance actually has some jurisdiction over some of the planted areas along the river. And so we manage those spaces by thinning out the invasives and making sure that the trees that are growing there are healthy. We plant saplings to make sure that we're regenerating the forests in a lot of those areas, and we plant herbaceous plants like native wildflowers. Um, so we have some flexibility with how we're getting that done. in a lot of those
Okay.
spaces. Um, so it would be a matter of coordinating with our conservation crew. They typically are the ones who kind of organize those events, and they're usually done with volunteers. Um,
Hmm.
so, I'm sure there's a way that we can sync up and find a time and place to get some wildflowers in the ground, maybe during one of those planting events alongside the saplings.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And I can probably help with finding some volunteers.
Hmm.
We have an Earth Club and a lot of very interested students, and I can get them pretty excited about pollinators.
Yeah,
Okay, wonderful. It'd be great to work with you both.
for sure. I'd
I
love to
just
see
got
you work.
I just got a text from this organization, so I'm gonna read it and see what they have to say, and I'll tell you what they say in a second,
Sure.
in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But okay, so you can go out.
Actually, we actually have rain garden management.
Hmm.
We have some planned. It's on our website already, and I know for our rain gardens we do plant the native species. I don't know if they're going to be planting more, but it's a way of like maintaining those rain gardens and the native species. I'm not sure if they're gonna make them like a pollinator corridor exactly, but that's something to look into. And yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. The rain gardens do get a lot of stewardship as well. We have 9 rain gardens here in Starlight Park, and we activate them with volunteers throughout
Oh,
the year. So,
okay, good,
yeah.
good, good. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's encouraging.
I would love to learn more about where the conservation crew is seeing more degraded habitat that could use some TLC. That would sound like a perfect area for a pollinator corridor along the river. Very cool.
Good.
I don't know anything about what all of you do, but I would say that I'm just fascinated. I would say that you keep talking about collaboration, and there's so many groups around New York, and then we just think of rivers, right? All the different river and water groups. Have you guys ever considered having, small visits to each other's habitats in the sense of, saying we're having an event to invite everybody from Brooklyn and from the Rockaways and other ecological groups to come and visit so that, you try to collaborate on monies. It's also nice to know what everybody's doing and to share the knowledge and to know that you're not alone and even know that the Bronx River exists in the first place, right? Christian, how many times do we have to explain to people, yes, there's a river in the Bronx, and then I just, okay, on the river, we have a different perspective when we're paddling because we get the people that say to us, I didn't know this was here. This is so beautiful. I love this so much. I've never heard anything negative in 7 years, nothing. And you just want to invite people over here. And we do get people from far away. So I'm just saying, on your end, all those ecological groups, inviting them over, come visit, come for lunch, come for our tea, right, Kristen? Come for whatever. I don't know. It might be neat to have some events in that way and to join forces.
That is a really, really great idea. I'm really glad you brought that up. We've only done that a teeny tiny bit with our interns. We've done some intern exchanges where our folks have gone to Randall's Island. They've gone up to Wave Hill in the North Bronx, and their interns have come to us, and they were able to exchange information and talk about their experiences and what they like about the spaces that they steward. But it would be fantastic to do an exchange and for us to visit a brand new, well, new to me, a water body somewhere else in the city and have them come and explore this. I think that's a really great idea, Mark. And I think a good way to continue to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the Alliance. Um, there's a fantastic salt marsh. If folks are not familiar with Randall's Island, there's a really beautiful restored salt marsh on Randall's Island that is definitely worth a visit. Um, and I think it would be a great way to reconnect with, those partners.
Really on a side note, just I have to remember to talk to Andrew because our docks are public, right? So our
They are.
docks are public, right? I think we just need to do, like I also volunteer for the pier. I always forget what pier it is on 57th Street. And they know you and we know them. And they always keep telling me they want to come over and visit. So on that end too, I guess I'll work on that with Andrew. We should invite kayakers and canoers from all over to come visit.
Yeah. Pier 57, on the nerdier scientific side of things, they also annually catch fish from the Hudson and put them on display for a number of months at their facility. They have huge fish tanks down there that you can come in and check them out. And then they release all the fish on the same day in October, and it's called the release of the fishes or something like that. And it's kind of like their annual end of season event where they invite everybody over. Um, I think it would be great if we found a way to collaborate and did an exchange there as well.
Cool.
Yeah, and of course, there's kayaking down there and there's kayaking over here, so there's multiple ways that we could be collaborating. I really like that suggestion. Anyone else have any thoughts or anything resonating with them? I see David put in the chat, maybe some of the local groups can take us out on the water, SUNY Maritime or Hutch River. On the water, you mean in boats, David?
Yeah, Hutchison River has a pontoon boat that has a large capacity. SUNY Maritime has a research vessel. Um, yeah, it could be a cool kind of different perspective, you know?
Yeah, I didn't know that they had vessels like that, but that
Yeah.
would be really cool.
They even have some other like activities that you could do on the vessel out on the water. So, regarding SUNY Maritime, like other kind of researchy type of stuff that you could do.
I see a second for the Hutchinson River boat tour. Well, I guess I'm the only one that's never been on it. That sounds like a lot of fun. And SUNY Maritime is, they've become one of our partners, actually. We now have a pretty good relationship with them, so I think that would be cool to explore as well. Folks are welcome to send me an email or get in contact with us if, a week from now you got a really bright idea and you'd love to share it. You're always welcome to reach out and let us know your thoughts. I guess a question that I have is, as we're looking at maybe getting some of these things on the calendar, do folks have a preference for weekend engagements or evening engagements during the week? Like, maybe this is a poll I should share. So maybe we don't have to all answer right now. But I will send you out a poll. It would be good to know when folks are the most available, and that would help us to figure out when would be the best time to schedule these things. And I appreciate that folks make time during the evening and the week to join the Eco Team meeting. But if there's other times during the week that is very easy for staff to commit to, but I know that folks tend to be available, like on a Saturday, for example, for an engagement. So keep an eye out. I'm going to send a poll, and yeah, please respond and let us know when we can get these things on the calendar. I'd love to grow my fishing skills. Yeah, Catherine, I feel that too. I went fishing once and I was really bad at it. So don't give me a fishing pole, give me a net. I'm a lot better with using a net.
But you don't do any catch and release on the Bronx River, kind of as an organization?
Not as an organization. People do, like the community does, but we've never organized anything like that. I do know that there are groups that lead fishing clinics, like New York State Parks leads fishing clinics in their parks that are on like the East River, for example, and they teach people how to fish. So maybe we can have someone come here and do something here. Daniel, I see your hand.
Well, I would like to ask if folks are down to join us on April 25th. I'll put it in the chat. So if that's a day where you can come and join us, then we will have an activity that engages you. And if you want to volunteer and, be a part of the leadership of that activity, even better. But that is our Earth Day celebration in Starlight Park, right outside our office from 12 to 4 p.m. And if there's something, extra special we want to do, slightly ahead of the event starting, we can also do that.
Sounds great.
Was there any other update from, the pollinator? Oh my gosh.
Oh,
Uh,
I need to discuss it more with them. There's
okay.
a little blip,
All right.
little glitch, so I have to discuss it with them.
Well, just to say, we believe very strongly in supporting our pollinators. Um,
Okay.
so
All right. I'm
yeah,
hopeful.
yeah,
So we'll see
I
what
think it
happens.
resonates. I think, there's potential there, and I'd love
Yeah.
to look into it further.
Great. Great.
Alrighty. Please feel free, as I mentioned, to reach out if you have a bright idea after the meeting. And I love the ideas that have been brought up already. Some of these I've never ever considered before. So thank you. I think there's a lot of great things that we could do this year, and I'm looking forward to getting to hang out with you all in person and not just hanging out and looking at your little square on my computer screen. All right, so speaking of, here are some upcoming volunteer opportunities that we're looking forward to this year. As was mentioned a little earlier, we are bringing back Project Waste. Um, this is a volunteer opportunity that helps to keep the river free of trash and also allows us to collect um, a little bit of data on what is in the water and maybe a little bit of where it's coming from. So Project Waste is an acronym. It stands for Waterway and Street Trash Elimination. We first launched this in 2016 using a trash boom deployed at the border between the Bronx and Westchester County. And what we learned from Project Waste was actually that a lot of the floatable trash that goes downstream through the Bronx River actually originates in Westchester County and doesn't originate in the Bronx, um, which was pretty interesting to learn. Since that launch in 2016, two more trash booms were installed further north in Westchester County, one of them in White Plains and one of them in Tuckahoe, and the folks in Westchester do the same activity. And we've been able to compare data over the years and see how the trash is different from one section of the river to the other. It turns out that the trash is not really that different in the different sections of the river, and I guess that makes sense. So we're bringing it back. We were not able to do it for a number of years because of issues accessing that location. And we might have to shift the location just a little bit to account for a reconstruction that's happening in one of those parks. But it's a cool event. You get to wear waders, you get to pick up garbage, you get to collect some data, and it's really fun. And so I'm excited to offer that back to our volunteers. And you can check that out on our calendar of events on our website. And I'll send out the first upcoming event that we have, which will be around the time of Earth Day. And so if you're available, I encourage you to check that out.
Hey, Christian, I wonder, how segments of the highway are set for cleanup and sponsored by different groups.
Hmm.
Too bad sections of the rivers aren't sponsored by different groups.
Like the Adopt a Highway campaign,
Yeah,
like
why
Adopt a
not?
River.
We're a pathway.
Yeah, that's a pretty fun idea. A great way to get some funding too.
Put it on the back of the waders, a little advertisement.
Yeah, yeah, that would actually, I don't know how we would initiate that, but it would be cool to do an Adopt a River kind of campaign.
That's a great idea, actually. I
Yeah,
love it.
I will pass that to our development folks and see where it goes. Cool. Slightly different. Also getting up close and personal with the river. Project Water Drop, or Detecting River Outfalls and Pollutants, is the volunteer-led program that allows us to see the amount of fecal bacteria that enters into the river during the warm season, so between May and October. It's pretty cool. The volunteers basically adopt their own monitoring site during the season, and then they go out independently on a Thursday morning, grab a sample, and then bring it back to us, and it gets processed, and the data gets shared out the following day. So Mark, who's on the call now, was a sampler for a while, um, and Juvella also was a sampler for a couple of years before we hired her. So it's pretty cool. Juvella or Mark, do you want to say anything about your experience doing this program?
Yeah, I learned a lot about tides.
Yes, you sure did.
That we also learned that we don't do it in the wintertime. So that's not
Mhm.
yeah. It's really hard to get in a kayak and go do a deep water sample and then come back and realize there's no water to paddle into. So it's Christian, I should do it again. I should do it again for you. I'll check in with you.
Yeah, we've actually kind of moved away from having the volunteers use boats to collect the samples, but I always appreciated those efforts back in the day.
I
You're
was
saying,
gonna
Blake?
say I did not collect the sample in a boat,
No.
but I did collect the sample at near the Gated Street Dam, and it was like it's a lot simpler of a process. So it's not just open to people who are like scientists exactly. It's just nice to be part of like the data collection, even though I am myself a scientist. But yeah, it was just nice to get out and learn more about the river and the data that goes with it. And now I
Yeah.
have this job.
Yeah, now you're on the other side. Now you're actually receiving the volunteer samples. I can share more information for folks who are interested. There are 11 sites that we collect samples from. We only really encourage people to go to 9 of them. There's a few of them that are a little bit more challenging that we reserve for staff. But along the entire length of the river, from basically I think the Gun Hill Road area down to Soundview Park, folks are able to grab those samples and help us to figure out what's going on. So if that sounds cool to you and you're available on Thursday mornings in the spring and the summer, please let me know. I'd love to get you involved. This is the volunteer training event where we teach you how to do the sampling. And then if you want to commit, we'll give you materials and get you all situated. And then you can sample for us. That's me. That's me out on the dock here in Starlight Park. We have these really cool extendable poles that allow you to kind of grab the sample from trickier areas with more ease. Um, Although a dock is a really easy place to collect a sample, obviously, there are some parts of the river where it's a little bit harder, and those poles are really, really handy. So that's kind of what it would look like if you were out on the river by yourself grabbing some samples, or if you're out with your friend.
The locations that we chose to do this program are like locations we know we do a lot of like recreational activities or places there are a lot of recreation. So that's the reason why we chose these 10, 11 locations. So,
Yeah, thank you for naming that, Jabella. Part of the kind of background concept for this program is to be looking at the places where the community is the most likely to come in contact with the river. We know that people do swim in the water. We really don't encourage that, and we, um, try to keep people as safe as possible and let them make the most healthy and safe decisions. But when it's really hot, and when don't have the eyes on different parts of the river, people do get in the water. We've seen a lot of that last year, and it concerns us. And so this project helps us to figure out um, which parts of the river are more at risk and are less at risk, and where there's new issues and where things are getting better. And it just allows us to get all the information possible to um, inform our policies and priorities around improving the river. Yeah, good point.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You guys are you monitoring that? You're monitoring long day. Every other week. You're not monitoring every week. That's what it.
No,
Okay,
yeah,
just please.
we would love to if we could, because it just makes
Gotcha.
for a better data set, but it's just expensive.
It is expensive. So that's one. And then two is that's interesting. We will talk. Because I don't know if well, we can talk more, Christian. I just got all the IDEX equipment because I got some money finally.
Great.
And I got reagent and things like that. But it's only good for a certain amount of time.
That's
um,
true.
so we'll talk, because if I can't use it all, I might pass it around. So yeah, we'll talk. Um, that's thing one. Thing two was do the volunteers get to learn how to actually do the testing part of it at all, or could they? Is my other question. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I've had people shadow me in the lab
Okay,
before.
cool.
Under my supervision, I've had them try their hand at the sampling process. Um,
Cool.
they're not really allowed to just like do that, but
Yeah,
it's
no,
definitely get
totally.
the behind the scenes and see how the whole process works.
Yeah, I was just checking if there
Yeah.
was anybody that would want to do that because I know so I ran the lab from 2011 to God, when did I do that? I don't know. I almost 10 years. I did this at LaGuardia for a very
Hmm.
long time, and I usually had, I don't know, 3 or 4 interns working with me because we were accepting a lot of samples, like 20
Hmm.
samples, a lot of samples. We would get, that's before they set up the lab at Two Trees. So we were taking a lot of samples, but but I just trained them and then they would do the stuff with me. But I was thinking I might have a couple students that would be interested in this, but I would want them to learn how to actually do the testing. Um, that was part of my reasoning to get stuff. But we can talk. Right now I don't have anywhere to set up equipment anyway, but that would be important for me that they actually learn how to do the testing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's it. That's all. So and I could even provide reagent if they could and trays. But we can always discuss. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah. That's the thing is I have reagent, I have trays, I have a brand new machine, I have all that kind of stuff. But right now I can't set anything up because my lab is getting redone. So it's kind of interesting. I
Hmm.
know everybody's like, really? Wait, people have stuff. It's kind of cool, right?
Very cool. Yeah, I
So
would love to talk more.
yeah, we'll talk. So sorry about that. I just wanted to clarify how you guys are doing it. But okay, this is good to know. Thank
Yeah,
you.
for sure. We'll be in touch. Very exciting. Just to let folks know, that this effort happens across the city, and there's actually a coalition essentially called um, the CWQT. What does that stand for again? Citizens Water Quality Testing Group?
I think it was citywide
There you go.
water quality testing.
Thank you, Jabella. So, there's a lot of organizations that do this across the city, and we try to line up the sampling day. So everybody's basically doing this on a Thursday. It seems like a weird day of the week, I know, but it's very consistent with what happens across the city. And so when everyone's data comes in, we get a snapshot of um, basically water quality conditions across the entire city, all 5 boroughs. Maybe not Staten Island. I don't remember if there's sites. Oh yeah, there are. Yeah, all 5 boroughs. So it's actually part of a much larger project than just what's on the Bronx River, which is really cool. And every time I tell volunteers that they're part of something that's a citywide effort, that seems to make them excited and make them feel like they're part of something that's bigger than themselves, which is cool. So,
It's very exciting. I mean,
yeah,
it's amazing that the Bronx River has that many sites that get consistently tested. I think it's incredible. Exciting. Yeah.
yeah, it's challenging, but it is rewarding. Cool. All right, what else we got over here? I know we're coming up on time. Thank you all for sticking with us.
Actually, Christian,
Yep.
Charlotte was wondering if they have to be in the area to participate in the sampling. So there's a hold period when you after you collect the sample, and after you collect the sample, you put it on ice because it is bacteria. We're testing for fecal bacteria, and I believe that hold period is 6 hours from after sampling.
Yeah,
Am I
just
correct?
about.
So the question about like you have to be in the immediate area, I
I
would
I
say
think
kind of
I think
yes.
Charlotte's question might have been different about like being there for the entirety of the season. So
Oh,
I think we will accept your help at any point in time. But we might, move you around if there's somebody who always likes testing at this one particular site.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we've had people commit to the whole season from May to October, which is amazing. We've had people commit to just like 4 weeks, um, as they're able to. We accept any and every bit of help as we can because it's a big effort. So even if you can only do, the month of July, right, and that's your only free time, that's fine. We'll still take your support. You don't have to commit to all 6 months of sampling. It's very rare that someone has that much free time. And to Javella's point, yeah, it is time sensitive. The sample needs to be in the lab within 6 hours of it being collected from the river. If it's not back to the facility within that time, it might get rejected. And I go over all of this during the training session. So, um, yeah. So switching gears a little bit, and just mentioning if folks need to drop off, please feel free. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But we mentioned that there's a lot of planting that's going to be coming up this year. We were very fortunate to receive funding from the DEC to do some pretty intense reforestation efforts in some of our parks, which is really exciting. And we're kicking it off in March with an invasive species kind of pulling bonanza in Muskrat Cove to prep the site to receive trees later in the year. These sites were chosen because of how degraded they are. And in some cases, I think in this particular location where the photo was taken, there really hasn't been any restoration effort for a few decades. And so it's really not looking very nice in terms of the amount of invasive species that are strangling the forest there. So we could use all the help we can get. This is going to be our kind of first event of the year for this project, but there will be events throughout this year and actually going forward for another few years. It's a long-term grant. So if planting trees and pulling vines is your jam, I encourage you to look at our calendar of events because there's going to be something in there for you. This is a cool opportunity from New York City Parks. It's another community science opportunity to monitor wildlife. This one is for raptors. And so it's all 5 boroughs, not just the Bronx River. And it monitors the nesting and offspring rearing activities of hawks and falcons and owls and eagles, which exist across all 5 boroughs. And it's cool. You get to go out to a site and monitor it and report back to Parks, and then Parks sends out a weekly update of all the activities of the different birds. They track the different species and where all the nests are, and it's very cool. It provides some really, really great data on how these animals are coexisting alongside of us in the urban landscape, which is really important to be monitoring. And so if this is something that sounds interesting to you, I encourage you to scan that QR code or email those to folks from Parks. Or I can put you in touch with them if you'd like, just to learn a little bit more about this opportunity. All right, so some of the other things that we're looking forward to in this year is hopefully, fingers crossed, doing another fish stocking in April. Fish stocking has happened many times over the years. We're trying to restore the native alewife herring population in the Bronx River. The first stocking, I believe, was back in 2006 or sometime around then when alewife were discovered at the base of the 182nd Street Dam. And that was part of the inspiration for building that passage over the dam because we knew that migratory fish were trying to access the freshwater areas of the river. So we're hoping that it happens again this year. It's really dependent on the amount of fish that swim up into the nearby freshwater rivers that we source the fish from. There are some years where there's not enough fish or we can't really find any fish, and so then we can't do the stocking. But we're hoping that this year is a good year and we'll actually be able to bring those fish to the Bronx River and have them spawn and then get that population going again. We do see the fish return every year. There's a camera in that fish passage and we can see who's swimming up and down there. And we do see alewife come back pretty much every year in varying numbers. So we know that they are actually using the Bronx River as a spawning ground, and this effort is a part of that. So looking forward to that. We're also working closely with a group of organizations and partners in Westchester County to build out some of our projects from the watershed plan up in Westchester. And so we're excited to keep doing that, looking for opportunities, looking to engage the public in helping us to set priorities and continue to make improvements to the watershed up there. And I hope to have some updates later in the year to give you about what we're doing up in Westchester County. We are engaging in targeted outfall monitoring in Westchester County. The sewer system looks a little different in Westchester than it does in most of New York City. The pipes are supposed to be separated, so rainwater goes down one pipe. When you flush your toilet, that goes down a different pipe. In theory, that's a great way of keeping those things from mixing together. In practice, they do mix together, and finding out where that's happening is extremely difficult. We know that some of the pipes collapse, and then you have sewer water running into the storm drain, and that ends up in the river, and you've got sewage in the river. And so through the targeted outfall monitoring, we're able to kind of narrow down where those issues are happening, and then communicate that to whatever municipality we're in, if that's Mount Vernon, if that's Bronxville, if that's Scarsdale, kind of getting a sense of what kind of shape their infrastructure is in, and then sharing our information with them so that they can, or we can work with them hopefully to make some repairs. So we'll be doing that again this year and should have some cool results to share with you later in the year. As I mentioned, Project Base is coming back. We're hoping to do a lot of wildlife monitoring and nature walks this year. We know that the community really enjoys those things. We've done bird watching, we've done canoeing where we give people binoculars and we go bird watching from a boat. It's a very popular activity, and we're looking to bring that back again in 2026. And of course, we're very active in a number of coalitions across the city. Holly and I are both part of the Swim Coalition, which is really focused on improving water quality and managing stormwater across New York so that the water is clean and that our communities are safe. And there's many others that we're active in as well. Always happy to give report backs to this group on those coalition spaces and how we've been active there. I think we're coming up towards the end of this presentation. I want to call this out. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a report of some dead fish in the river in Scarsdale. We only knew because someone sent me a text message to say, and with some pictures to show that there was dead fish. And that is really the only way that we can understand what's happening along 24 miles of river. So we encourage you, if you're out along the Bronx River, if you see something, if you smell something that doesn't seem right, please send us an email, send us a text. It's really helpful for us to know when there's something wrong, and then we can reach out to the agencies and other entities that can help address the problem. And the sooner we can do it is the sooner we can address that problem. Most of the spills that we've dealt with have been reported by somebody who was just out and about and saw them happening. So it's really, really important and very helpful for us that we have people that are always keeping their eyes and ears open along the river. If you would like to be more involved with this space, the Ecology Team, there are ways for you to do that. We have two co-chairs, Becca and David, who are very helpful and I do rely on for some support. But there's other ways to be involved besides being a co-chair. Meeting facilitation, note-taking is really, really helpful. Being a timekeeper is often really, really helpful. We're always on the lookout for campaigns and initiatives to bring to this space. I love when I'm able to share an opportunity to get signatures to support something in the name of bettering our environment. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, I encourage you to get more involved in the Eco Team. If you want to continue to work with me to find ways to develop in-person events and ways to engage, encourage that as well.
And I put a couple things in the chat earlier. There's a rally with the aligned with testifying at the New York City Council Parks Committee meeting, asking for funding for parks, and having more funding for parks means that things get maintained, trash gets picked up, and we have a cleaner river in many different ways, considering combined sewer outfalls. And there's an environmental education team meeting virtually on March 26th. So that's in there. We'll get it on our website, but it's linked on our Instagram and Facebook. And there was one other thing that I forgot. Oh, and I think, Christian, are we still looking for EELS mentors for the following year? Is that an open thing?
It will be.
It will be. Okay. It's on our website, so maybe I should take it down. We do have a number of job postings. One is Director of Environmental Justice. Another one is Director of Development and Communications. as well as more hands-on work with our conservation crew apprentices positions. So you can find all of them on that page. You got to scroll down a little, but they're towards the bottom.
Thank you, Daniel. With that, we are at time. Anyone have any following or final questions or thoughts that you'd like to share?
I have one, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
I think it's less of a question and more of a note of a conversation I'd love to have later. Once again, from the very beginning, I'm an educator at the Bronx Zoo, and I'm now in charge of the program that we run called Family Nature Club, which we run on the Riverwalk. So I'm assuming the numbers of the Enterococcus bacteria measured on the Riverwalk is from the boat launch area down at the end of the trail, where we're at all the time. So with families, with students, with campers in the summertime. So knowing to what level we should be either interacting or not interacting completely with, or interacting with informed consent and decisions from adults and parents is definitely a conversation I think I'd love to have to make sure that we are acting responsibly in that location, but still engaging our students and audiences.
Yeah. Please feel free to reach out. I would love to have a conversation. You're correct. We do that monitoring at the Mitsubishi Riverwalk, and we think that some of that material might be coming from the bison, which are right across the river from that space.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we can give some, basic guidance. Every time we take people out paddling, we tell them to, wash your hands the way we were taught during COVID. And don't touch your face and while your hands are in contact with the water in general, because even with the data, we're not going to be able to, you're not going to have like access to understand the level of contamination on any given day.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you.
One more piece of guidance that it's a rule of thumb for us. If it's rained, we don't go out and touch the water. We wait for that to have flushed itself away. Pretty standard across New York City, unfortunately. Rain basically fuels sewer overflows. And so that's kind of a rule of thumb. If it's rained in the last 24 hours or so, you just got to wait. Unless we're collecting samples with our protective gear. Yeah. Other questions, comments?
One other thing, there is a water body advisory that you can sign up for, but that won't actually be related to your area of water, but anything below 180th, that would be related to.
Yeah, that's sent out by the DEP. It's pretty helpful. There is some alignment with when there's a spike in bacteria in the CSO region, which we would get the alert for from DEP, and then when there's a spike in the upper part of the river as well. Not always, but you can kind of use that as a little bit of a guideline. If you get that advisory, it generally means that the whole river is probably not that safe. So it kind of works. Alrighty, y'all. Thanks for being here. Appreciate your input. Looking
Have a great night.
Looking forward to being in touch with you soon throughout the year.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everyone.